In the vibrant village of Kozi, there lived a man named Mr. Tand. He was known for his wealth, his fancy clothes, and the grand house he lived in at the top of the hill. But despite all he had, there was something missing in his life. He felt alone and his heart was heavy. He was kind, but no one in the village truly knew him. They only saw the man who could afford anything and everything, not the man behind the wealth. One hot afternoon, Mr. Tand decided to visit the market to see what was new. The air was filled with the smell of fried plantains and sweet mangoes. The streets were alive with people calling out their prices and children laughing as they played games. But then, he saw her, a young girl sitting on the ground near the fruit stand, holding a wooden flute that looked like it hadn't been played in years. The girl, named Amara, looked up as Mr. Tand approached. Her eyes were big and sad, and there was a hint of hunger in her face. Her clothes were torn, and her feet were covered in dust. "Why are you sitting here, the little one?" Mr. Tand asked, his voice gentle. The market seemed to pause, as if the entire world was waiting to hear her answer. "I'm hungry, sir," Amara said with a small, trembling voice. "I don't have a home, and no one will give me work." Mr. Tand's heart ached at her words. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp $200 bill. The bill seemed to shimmer in the sunlight as he handed it to her. Amara's eyes widened in shock. "Take this, Amara. It will help you find food and shelter," Mr. Tand said. He could see the hope flicker in her eyes, a hope that felt as fragile as the breeze. "Thank you, kind sir," Amara whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. She hugged the money to her chest as tears began to fall. Mr. Tand smiled, the warmth spreading through him. He watched as she stood up, her eyes brighter than before as she walked away, holding the bill like it was a treasure. Little did Mr. Tand know that this act of kindness would come back to him in the most unexpected way. Amara's life changed the day Mr. Tand gave her $200. With the money, she was able to buy food and find a small, cozy place to stay. It wasn't much, just a tiny room at the edge of the village, but it was hers, and it meant safety. Amara could finally breathe without worrying about where she would sleep or if she would have food to eat. With her new home, she set out to make a living. The village healer, Mama Nia, noticed the young girl's keen interest in plants and their uses. Mama Nia was an old woman with silver hair and eyes as sharp as an eagle's. She had watched Amara play in the market when she was just a child, dreaming of a better life. "Come to me, child," Mama Nia said one morning, seeing Amara walk past her hut. "I see the spark of curiosity in your eyes. Let me teach you the secrets of the land." Amara's heart leaped with joy. She had always loved the stories Mama Nia told about the magical herbs and how they could heal wounds, stop fevers, and even ease pain. Every day, Amara spent hours with Mama Nia, learning which plants could cure sickness, which ones were poisonous, and how to mix them into powerful medicine. One day, Mama Nia said, "Amara, you have a gift. Your touch is gentle, and your heart is kind. People will come to you for help, and you must always remember why you started this path. It's not just about curing the body, it's about healing the soul." Amara's skills grew with time, and soon, people from the village began seeking her out for help. She would wake up before the sun and spend the day gathering herbs, mixing potions, and visiting those who were sick. She became known as Amara the healer, and even the elders spoke of her with admiration. One afternoon, a woman named Ngozi came to Amara's little home with her young son. The boy had a fever so high that his tiny body shook. Amara took one look at him and knew he needed something strong and quick. She hurried to her herb shelf, mixing a blend of ginger, honey, and crushed leaves of the ojari plant. The mixture was strong, but it worked. Within hours, the boy's fever broke, and he began to smile again. Ngozi was so grateful she gave Amara a small basket of ripe mangoes as a thank you. Amara's life had changed, but she never forgot Mr. Tand. She often thought of the day he had given her the money, the way he had looked at her with hope and kindness. He had given her more than just money, he had given her a chance at life. She wondered how he was and whether he was still the same man who had helped her or if he had forgotten her entirely. As years went by, Amara's name spread not just in Kazi but to the surrounding villages. People came to her not just for medicine but for comfort and hope. And every time someone asked her how she learned her skills, she would smile and think of Mr. Tand, who had shown her that kindness could change the world. One day, Amara overheard the village children playing near her window. They were pretending to be heroes, talking about the great Mr. Tand who lived at the top of the hill. They said he was very rich but had grown ill and no doctor could help him. Amara's heart stopped for a moment. Was this the same Mr. Tand who had given her the money all those years ago? She knew what she had to do. Amara gathered her herbs, prepared her healing tools, and set out for the grand house at the top of the hill. The road was dusty, and the sun was hot, but her heart was full of determination. It was time to give back to the man who had once changed her life. Little did she know, this journey would change both their lives forever. The road to Mr. Tand's house was not an easy one. It twisted through the rolling hills, past fields where farmers worked their land, and under trees whose leaves whispered in the wind. Amara walked with purpose, her small basket of herbs and medicine carefully balanced on her head. The sun cast a warm glow on her skin, but her heart felt heavier than the weight of the basket. What if Mr. Tand didn't remember her? What if he refused her help? These thoughts crowded her mind, but she pushed them aside. She had to try. The grand house at the top of the hill was different from any other in the village. It was built with white stone that shone in the sunlight, with tall windows that looked out over the land like watchful eyes. It was surrounded by gardens full of flowers she had never seen before, roses, orchids, and vines with bright yellow blossoms that seemed to dance in the wind. Amara stopped for a moment to catch her breath and take in the sight. This was not just a house, it was a kingdom in itself. As she approached the front gate, a tall man with a kind face stepped out to meet her. His skin was dark and his smile warm, but there was a tiredness in his eyes that spoke of worry. His name was Olu, and he was Mr. Tand's trusted helper. "Hello, young one," Olu said with a nod. "What brings you to the master's home?" Amara hesitated for a moment before speaking. "My name is Amara. I come with a gift for Mr. Tand. I was told he is unwell." Olu's eyes flickered with surprise, then concern. "Mr. Tand has been sick for weeks. No healer has been able to help him. But come, let me take you to him." Amara followed Olu through the gardens and into the house. The walls inside were lined with fine wood and decorated with paintings of people she did not know. The air smelled of cedar and jasmine, and soft light poured through the tall windows. It was beautiful, yet it felt cold and distant, almost like a place where no real life could thrive. Olu led her to a room at the far end of the house. It was dimly lit, with curtains drawn over the windows, but Amara could see the figure of a man lying on a large bed. His face was pale, and he looked smaller than she remembered. The once proud and confident Mr. Tand now seemed fragile and weak. "Mr. Tand," Olu said gently, stepping forward. "You have a visitor." The old man's eyes opened slowly. At first, they looked confused, but then they lit up with recognition. His voice was a raspy whisper, barely audible. Amara felt a surge of emotion. "Yes, Mr. Tand. I'm here to help you." He smiled, though it was weak. You're all grown up. I never thought I'd see this day." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. The man who had once given her hope was now lying in bed, unable to help himself. She felt a mixture of sadness and determination. "I'm here to repay your kindness, sir. Let me help you." Mr. Tand's smile grew stronger, though he winced in pain. "Amara, you are more generous than I could have ever imagined. But many have tried and none have succeeded." Amara took a deep breath and stepped forward. She opened her basket and carefully laid out her herbs and bottles. The room was quiet except for the soft rustling of the leaves outside and the distant sound of birds chirping. The air seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. She began to mix the herbs, grinding them into a fine paste and adding drops of water and honey. The scent of ginger and mint filled the room, and Mr. Tand's eyes grew wide with interest. "What is that, child?" he asked, his voice stronger now. "It's a mixture of ojari leaves, ginger, honey, and a special blend Mama Nia taught me. It will help you feel better." Amara leaned over and gently placed a spoonful of the mixture to Mr. Tan's lips. His eyes fluttered, but he opened his mouth and swallowed. A moment of silence passed, and then something unexpected happened. The color in his cheeks began to return, just a little, but enough for Amara to notice. Is it working?" Mr. Tan whispered. Amara beamed. "Yes, sir. Just rest now. I'll be here when you wake up." Hours passed as the day turned into evening. Amara stayed by Mr. Tan's side, changing the cold cloth on his forehead and whispering gentle words of encouragement. Slowly, he drifted into a deep sleep, his breathing more even than before. Olu, who had been watching from the doorway, came into the room and nodded with a smile. "You've done what no one else could, Amara," he said softly. "You've brought hope back to this house." Amara smiled, but her heart was full of questions. Why had Mr. Tan helped her all those years ago? Why had he given her $200 when he barely knew her? She knew there was more to this story, more than he had ever shared with her. But that was for another day. For now, she was content to watch over him and know that she had done something good. As night fell and the moon rose, casting its silver light across the hills, Amara whispered to herself, "Thank you, Mr. Tan. You've given me so much. Now, it's my turn to give back." And with that, she sat by his side, holding his hand and watching over him as the world outside fell silent. The next morning, Amara woke up to the gentle sound of birds singing outside the window. The sky was a bright shade of blue, and sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting warm patterns on the floor. Mr. Tan was still sleeping, but his breathing was steady and even. Amara could see that his face had more color, a small but hopeful change. A smile crossed her lips as she leaned over him, checking his pulse. He was stronger than before, and she knew that the worst was behind him. Olu appeared at the doorway, holding a tray with a cup of tea and some bread. His face was bright with gratitude, and his eyes met Amara's with a silent thanks. "Good morning, Amara," he said, his voice soft and warm. "Mr. Tan is looking better. You've done a miracle." Amara's heart swelled at his words. "He's not out of danger yet," she said with a smile. "But he will be, with time." Olu nodded and set the tray down on the small table by the bed. "The doctor will be here soon, but I don't think we'll need him now." He looked at Amara with a spark of hope. "You have a gift, young one." Before Amara could respond, Mr. Tan stirred, his eyes slowly opening. He looked around the room, taking in the sight of sunlight filtering through the curtains and the gentle glow of the morning. He saw Amara sitting beside him, a look of relief on her face. His lips curved into a weak but genuine smile. "Amara." "Yes, Mr. Tan," she said softly. "You're going to be okay." Mr. Tan's eyes shimmered with emotion as he reached out to grasp her hand. It was frail but firm, a touch that held years of wisdom and kindness. "You've come back into my life at a time when I needed it most." "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. "Just get better," Amara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "That's all the thanks I need." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds being the distant rustle of leaves and the soft hum of birds. Amara knew there was so much more she wanted to say, but the moment was so precious, she didn't want to break it. Mr. Tan closed his eyes, and for a brief second she thought he had fallen asleep again. But then he spoke, his voice stronger this time. "Amara, do you remember the day I gave you the $200? He asked. "Yes, I remember," she said, surprised that he would bring it up. The memory of that day was vivid in her mind, the sun shining, the look of kindness in his eyes, and the way he had placed the money in her hands. It had been a day that changed her life forever. "Do you know why I did it?" he asked, his eyes locked on hers. Amara shook her head, her heart pounding in her chest. She had always wondered why he had been so kind. Why had he seen a girl like her and chosen to help? But now, in this moment, she felt like she might finally get an answer. Mr. Tan's face grew serious, and he took a deep breath. "I was once just like you, a child with dreams but no way to make them come true. When I was young, my parents were poor and I had to fight for everything. But one day, a stranger came to me and offered me help just like I did for you. That act of kindness changed the course of my life, and I promised myself that when I grew strong, I would do the same for someone else." Amara's eyes filled with tears as she listened. It was as if the pieces of a puzzle she didn't even know she was putting together had finally fallen into place. She understood now. Mr. Tand had given her the money because he wanted to pass on the kindness that had been given to him so long ago. "I never forgot that promise, Amara," he continued. "And I will never forget you. You remind me of the girl I once was. Strong, kind, and full of hope. I know now that my life is richer because of you, and I am thankful." Amara felt the weight of his words settle in her heart. It was more than she had ever hoped for. This man, who had helped her without a second thought, was now the one being helped. And in that moment, she understood that true kindness was a cycle, passing from one person to another, creating ripples of change. "I'm glad I came back," she whispered. "And I'm glad you're going to be okay." Mr. Tan smiled, the light in his eyes growing brighter. He squeezed her hand gently. "You have a gift, Amara, and I know you will use it to help many more people. You're going to do great things, just like I once dreamed to." Tears streamed down Amara's face, but they were no longer tears of sadness. They were tears of joy, hope, and a new beginning. She knew this was not just the end of a chapter but the start of a beautiful new story. One where kindness, compassion, and a promise kept would forever change both of their lives. The weeks that followed were filled with change and hope. Mr. Tan's health continued to improve, and soon he was able to sit up in bed and take small walks around the room. Amara never left his side, bringing him fresh water, warm meals, and the soothing herbs that had started his recovery. All watched the transformation with a mixture of disbelief and joy. It seemed that Amara had truly worked a miracle, and it was clear to him that her kindness had done more than heal Mr. Tan's body, it had brought life back to the house. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Mr. Tan sat at the edge of his bed, gazing out the window. He looked out at the gardens that had always been his pride and joy, but now they seemed more vibrant than ever. It was as if the world itself was saying thank you to the girl who had saved him. "Amara," he called, his voice stronger and filled with new energy. She rushed to his side, her heart swelling with happiness to see him so alert. "Yes, Mr. Tand. What do you need?" He looked at her with a gentle smile. "You've given me so much, but I want to give something back to you. I want to help you, Amara." Amara's eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. "But, Mr. Tand, I'm here to help you. You don't have to give me anything." He shook his head, the seriousness in his eyes making her pause. "No, child. You've shown me that true kindness is the most valuable thing in the world. And I have an idea. What if you came to work for me as an apprentice? You have such a gift with herbs and healing. You could learn and grow here, and in return, I could help you become even better at what you do." Amara's heart leapt with excitement. It was everything she had ever wanted. The thought of being able to help people just like she had helped Mr. Tand made her feel like her dreams were finally within reach. But then she remembered her mother, Nia, who worked hard every day to keep the family fed and safe. Would she be able to leave home and still help her family? "Mr. Tand, my mother, she's going to need me," Amara said, her voice wavering. Mr. Tand's smile softened, then he patted her hand. "Amara, I understand. You are brave and caring, and I know that you would never leave your family behind. But if you agree to work with me, I can provide for your family as well. Your mother won't have to work so hard, and you will be free to focus on learning and helping others." Amara's eyes glistened with tears. The thought that she could make her mother's life easier was more than she could have hoped for. The weight of her decision began to lift as she realized this was a chance to not only fulfill her own dreams but to give her mother a better life too. "I will do it, Mr. Tand," she said, her voice strong now. "I will work for you and learn everything I can." Mr. Tand's eyes shone with pride. "Good, Amara. You have a kind heart, and I know you will make a difference. The village needs more people like you. As days turned into weeks, Amara's life changed in ways she never imagined. She learned to mix potions, heal wounds, and even assist with the occasional difficult delivery of babies. Mr. Tand shared stories of his youth, teaching her not just about healing but about compassion, patience, and the importance of giving. It was hard work, but Amara loved every moment of it. Her mother, Nia, noticed the change in her daughter. The smile that now danced on Amara's face was brighter than ever. The heavy look of worry that used to cloud her eyes was gone, replaced with determination and hope. "Amara, you're happy," Nia said one evening as they sat together, the warm glow of the lantern flickering between them. "And that makes me happy too." Amara hugged her mother tightly, feeling the strength of her embrace. "I'm going to do great things, Mama. And I'm going to help you, just like you've always helped me." The promise she made to Mr. Tand that day was not just a promise of a new beginning for herself, but for her entire family. With Mr. Tand's guidance and her mother's unwavering support, Amara knew she was ready to take on whatever came next. But little did she know that her journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, ones that would test her courage, her heart, and her belief in the power of kindness. But Amara was ready. After all, she was not just a girl with a basket of herbs. She was a healer, a helper, and someone who had already changed the world of one man. And soon, she would do the same for many more. It was a crisp morning in the village, and the early light shone on the dewy grass, turning it into a sea of tiny, sparkling jewels. Amara hurried to the small clinic where she worked alongside Mr. Tand. Today was different. There was an excitement in the air, something that made her heart flutter with anticipation. She had been working with Mr. Tand for several months now, learning the secrets of healing and the art of helping others, and her confidence had grown. But today was special. It was the day Mr. Tand would share his plans with the whole village. The clinic was a cozy room filled with the rich, earthy scents of herbs and the soft light of oil lamps. Mr. Tand was already there, arranging bottles and potions on the shelves. He looked up when Amara entered, his face breaking into a proud smile. "Good morning, Amara," he said, his voice warm and kind. "Are you ready for today?" "Yes, Mr. Tand." "I'm ready," she replied, her eyes bright with excitement. "Good," he said. "The people of this village have given me so much over the years. It's time I give back to them. Today, I am going to announce that I am starting a free clinic for everyone who needs it. It won't matter how rich or poor you are, and no one will be turned away." Amara's heart leaped with joy. The idea of helping even more people than before filled her with pride. She had always known that Mr. Tand was a generous man, but hearing his plan made her realize just how big his heart really was. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Olu stepped in, a smile stretching across his face. "The villagers are gathered by the riverbank, waiting for you, Mr. Tand." Mr. Tand nodded and turned to Amara. "Come with me, Amara. It's time to let the village know what we are doing." They walked down the path, the warm sun beaming down on them as they passed rows of small huts and the market where people were already busy buying and selling. The chatter of voices and the sound of laughter filled the air. The villagers stood in groups, curious looks on their faces as they saw Mr. Tand approach with Amara by his side. When they reached the riverbank, a hush fell over the crowd. Mr. Tand raised his hand, and the murmurs faded into silence. He cleared his throat, the lines of his face showing the weight of many years but also the strength of a man who had lived with purpose. "Friends, today I stand before you not just as a healer but as someone who has learned that life's greatest gift is to give. I have been blessed beyond measure, and now it's time to share that blessing with you all." Amara's heart pounded in her chest as she listened. She had never felt prouder of anyone. "I am starting a free clinic, a place where no one is turned away. It doesn't matter if you have nothing or if you have everything, your health and your well-being are what matter most." A cheer rose from the crowd, followed by claps and shouts of joy. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes as she looked around at the faces of the people who were smiling, their eyes wide with hope. She realized that this was the beginning of something bigger than she could have ever imagined. And as the crowd erupted in celebration, Amara felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was more than just a clinic, it was a promise, a new chapter for her, for Mr. Tand, and for the village. It was the start of a future where kindness and compassion would thrive, changing lives one act at a time.